Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. Russia's digesting the news of, well, the biggest protest the country has seen since 2012. They include the arrest and jailing for 2 weeks of anti-corruption activist Alexei Navalny, who says he wants to run for president next year. With us to talk about it from Moscow, Polina Nemirovskaya, a human rights campaigner with Open Russia. Welcome back to the show. By the way, where are you speaking to us from? It sounds a little busy where you are.
I'm really sorry for the noises, but I'm in a district court where people are still being, we still have hearings, and I have to coordinate the lawyers, and I have to make sure everything's all right. So I'm just sitting.
So you're speaking to us directly from the courthouse. Well, no need to apologize. Yes. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks as well to Yelena Milskanovskaya, who writes for daily newspaper Moskovsky Komsomolets and weekly. I'm butchering the name here. Komsomolets and weekly Sobozednik. Apologies for my pronunciation. Welcome back as well to independent journalist Anastasia Kirilenko and Anton Kozlov, who teaches at the American Graduate School of Paris. Before the break, we were talking about this video by Alexei Navalny that has indeed gone viral. It's a 49-minute expose where Navalny even shows images filmed with drones over lavish properties that he alleges were bought with corrupt money. They include this luxury chalet residence in the resort town of Sochi, where the Olympics were held back in 2014. What have you learned from that video, Anton Kozlov?
Well, you learned that Navalny has a drone, to begin with. No, that they did quite a lot of research. Some of the stuff had been published before. We knew about it. Now, there are no direct proof that, in fact, Medvedev owns this property. So it's a tricky question because he doesn't own it, but he uses all the time, and he's the only one, apparently, to use it. I think it's important to see that Navalny is able to create this kind of presentation, which is really well done, well argumented, even though this kind of arguments may not stand in the court of law. Nevertheless, 10 million views on YouTube, that's quite a lot. But another important thing is that this video had been published 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. Medvedev or anybody in the government did not respond to the publication of this video. This is very important. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people came to yesterday.
Because the government hasn't responded, so...
They didn't say anything about it, as if there was nothing, even though everybody knows about it. It's very similar to the publication of video about Chaika, the Attorney General, 2 years ago. He said something, but in fact, nothing came out of it.
Yelena Milskanovskaya, let me ask you, what do you think of the government's non-reaction, and what did you make of that video?
That the government non-reacted was very bad because at least they had to say something, and when they did not react at all, they showed that they had nothing to say, that they totally agree, which was shown to us. But I also wanted to say a few words about Navalny, that I don't completely trust this guy as well. I trust his investigations completely. I think they're based on facts, not of his thoughts, as some people say. But I know that 2 weeks earlier, almost half a month earlier, before this movie, in my newspaper, in Собеседник, there was an investigation made by our deputy editor-in-chief, our editor of investigation department. His name is Oleg Raldugin, and he's one of the greatest investigators in all Russia. For example, he first found out that Vladimir Putin's ex-wife got married again. He was first who knew it. And he made 2 weeks earlier than Navalny exactly the same investigation about Medvedev, and Navalny Navalny even didn't mention him in his movie at all. Like this investigation was all his own. And my newspaper, Moskovsky Komsomolets, made an interview with Oleg Raldugin about this, and he said that he is a kind guy and he forgave Navalny. He said that he's always like that. He always mentioned only himself because he wants this movies to be elected in 2018. So Navalny does it for his own pleasure. And he wants something from his investigations, so that's why Navalny will never say that someone made it as well. And it's not honestly, because if Navalny is all about to be honest, he should at least say that his colleagues did the same. So that's why I don't want this guy to be our president in 2018. And this article, this interview with Oleg Raldugin, when we said that he was first who made this investigation, was one of the most read articles on our site. It got more than 400,000 views on our website. It's really a lot. That Russia agree with us that Navalny shouldn't behave like that.
Anastasia Kirilenko, your thoughts on this? Because
no, I don't think this is a problem, because Navalny is a politician, and of course he makes his campaign also. The problem is, Yelena mentioned a very important thing. The rally was not allowed, and we have to respect the law, etc. According to the law, there's no problem at all, because Navalny is just a blogger. And he is not a journalist. And press secretary of Dmitry Medvedev said this is nonsense, we don't have to comment, etc. And the press in Russia is in a very bad situation. I can confirm that I'm trying to publish articles on Putin's corruption, also his secret palaces, etc. And it's very difficult.
This is important. The video targets Medvedev, doesn't target Putin. How do you explain that?
Because Navalny had a lot of evidence on Medvedev, and probably it was easier to make a video on Medvedev. But of course, even before we had video of Putin's secret palace, for example, it was published in Western media, not only on blogs. And why he's not talking about Putin? He admitted once that we have to allow Putin, to be out, to guarantee his safety and so on. But just the one thing we want is from Putin is to be out.
Polina Nemirovskaya, what was your reaction when you saw that video?
I hesitate to say that I didn't see the whole video, because it was quite obvious what you can see in this kind of video, because when you are with the opposition for some years and when you watch all these investigations, they all happen to be quite the same. Like some big guy from the government has a very big yacht and a very big house and some pretty nice cars. And in case of Medvedev, he has some Snickers. It's not really easy to surprise someone with experience of seeing these things. And here's also the reason that this protest was mostly led by young people who are new to the opposition and who go to schools and who just experience their protest against everything. And I always wondered why people from like Russian intelligentsia feared that we have a new generation that is born and raised under Putin's regime. Oh my God, what people would they be? Of course, they won't be Putin supporters, because young people don't support anyone. They don't like anything, and they go out in the streets and they protest because it's cool. And this is why they came to streets. And if you go back to investigations, in the last years, we've investigated, the opposition investigated really many people, and this is a very tricky moment for me. Why precisely this investigation on Medvedev triggered this protest? Because you could have seen this wave. People were really disappointed with the government. People were feeling like they live in some Brezhnev times when nothing happened, and we have this very slow economical stagnation, and we are the euphoria from the annexation of Crimea is gone, and new elections are coming, and nobody knows what to do. Because I was in a meeting of a political club, and there were many political consultants, and it was in December 2016, and it was extremely funny because there were like 7 respected political consultants sitting and just trying to pronounce with different words a thought that nothing will ever change. And then you can see this splash, and everything is changing in 2 months, and Putin is letting out people from these prisons, and people are marching for
marching against corruption. And you heard Yelena saying how she doesn't trust Alexei Navalny. Do you share that feeling?
I don't know. I think Alexei Navalny has his point, and he's a very he's the guy that needs to be installed in this political system. Of course, it wasn't surprising that somebody like him, like young Boris Yeltsin, appeared on the stage. But I don't think that the answer for Russia. It's an online. Ой, извините, это эфир.
Я понимаю.
Это не запись.
Какая разница, прямой эфир, трансляцию тоже нельзя вести.
Я не веду трансляцию в зале суда. Это
В
вообще.
любом случае, в здании это...
What's going on?
I'm sorry. The policemen are trying to forbid me to translate anything from the court. I'm really sorry. Это еще 10 минут, и мы закончим, правда?
Прямо сейчас, на каких 10 минут.
Хорошо, окей, я пойду на улицу.
She's not allowed to make any videos there, so she can be arrested.
She will go outside and continue.
Yeah, they have to go outside. It's extremely funny.
So you're having to move outside the place where you were inside the courthouse there.
Yes, because when you're in a court, you have to go to the head of court to. Да, ой, да. Sorry.
All right, well, we'll tell you what. We'll let you move outside the court. We'll come back to you in 1 sec so you can set up without us bothering you. Then we'll come back to you in just 1 minute. I'm going to turn to Anton Kozlov during that time. Anton, Alexei Navalny, he's not Andrei Sakharov or something. You know, people in the West are waking up, discovering who he is. He's somebody who's. This anti-corruption crusader, as we said, but with some hard views on things, most notably a staunch nationalist with tough words for illegal immigrants and people from the Central Asian republics at times.
I think I disagree with that. He's not a staunch nationalist, first of all. He was a member of the Yablok...
Or we're just seeing this through Western eyes.
No. I think it's an exaggeration. He certainly has certain views about illegal immigrations in Moscow, maybe. I mean, I've seen some videos that they've been posting that he campaigned against that. Basically, he was trying to get the votes of the people who were and are extremely frustrated with the fact that Moscow had been taken over by people coming mostly from the Caucasian region, from Central Asia, and so on and so forth. So I think he's been trying to capitalize. He's a political opportunist in that sense. But I think in terms of his political persona and in terms of his political ability to campaign, I think he's very good. He absolutely has no match in the opposition in Russia. He's probably the only person today.
So is he a threat to Vladimir Putin in that election?
I think to a certain extent he is, of course.
But he won't be allowed to participate in the elections. I followed the political life in Moscow since 10 years. And already in 2007, somebody, including Boris Nemtsov, who was later killed, they tried to participate in the elections. And they were just not allowed. This is Russian law, which Yelena mentioned. According to the law, this is something you have to collect like 1 million signatures. To be allowed to participate. It is possible, but then they will find that your signatures are false, etc. Even the European Court on Human Rights decided that our law on political parties and so on was not legal.
Yeah, but I think, if I can say, I think the important thing here is not to be allowed to participate in the presidential elections. Or I think the point he is making is to build a certain critical mass of political dissent, which then is going to be used to transform the system. That's what he's doing.
Yeah.
Yelena Milchanovska, is Alexei Navalny in any way a threat to Vladimir Putin in next year's election?
Is he afraid of him?
A threat? Is he? Could he beat Vladimir Putin ever in an election?
Honestly, I think, and Navalny probably thinks the same, that no one can beat Vladimir Putin, or maybe he can, because otherwise he wouldn't participate in the election. It's really hard to say, because I remember when Mikhail Prokhorov, another very rich man, he participated, he probably really thought that he could become the next president. Or I think Navalny should be a very romantic person to really believe that he can beat Vladimir Putin, because during last 17 years, no one managed it. But a lot of people wanted and tried.
All right,
No one managed. Only Medvedev, who was sent by Putin to be the next president, like substitution, managed it, but it was a legal substitution. And no one who really wanted against Putin, no one managed. Maybe Navalny will be the first one, who knows? We will see, because 17 is a special year in Russian history. We know that exactly 100 years ago, a lot of changes happened with our countries. Maybe it will be another try.
All right, so if you're superstitious, you pay attention to that number 17. Let's turn now to Polina Nemirovskaya. So you are, from what I can see, outside now
Yes.
of the courthouse. Just tell us then, on Alexei Navalny, what is his aim? We heard Anton Kozlov say he's not there to try to win the presidential election. He's there to build a movement. Do you agree with that?
Navalny is definitely here to try to win elections, the presidential elections, but not this one, definitely. And we cannot seriously presume that he is either going to be a president next year, or he even going to be let to participate in these elections. Now that elections haven't officially started, he's just building his network and his movement around all Russia. And you can see that he has huge crowds in different cities. And this is what really brings the cities to protesting, because they haven't experienced something this big and this emotional in years of Putin's regime, basically. And of course, Navalny is a charismatic, mostly to become the most powerful leader in Russia. I'm not sure he will accidentally reach this goal, but we can see. But what I do think is that a charismatic leader is totally not the answer for Russia to build a democracy, after all. We had some very interesting charismatic leaders, from like Lenin to Boris Yeltsin again. And this is what they left after them. What was left after them is the legacy of their cult, and that's it. And we have to find someone who will help us build a true democratical country with no such big institute of leadership, because this is my main problem with Vladimir Putin is not the fact that he is putting people to prison, not the fact that I see my future in Russia a little bit blurry, not the fact that all the people with brain actually leave my country. It's just the fact that he has built a system that is only brought together by himself. And when he leaves, and I don't think that somebody is a threat to Vladimir Putin, and I think that he'll just leave eventually because he'll grow too old. When he leaves, it will all start falling apart. And that is the problem with all the charismatic leader systems.
All right, let me bring in Anastasia Kirilenko on this, because I'm thinking about your family arguments, because you were telling us about earlier about how there's a bit of a generation gap when you speak to friends and family about this. You just heard Polina Nemirovskaya saying that what Russia doesn't need is a charismatic leader. Yet, what do Russians want at this point in time? I mean, Putin, let's give him credit. He restored pride in the nation after the rough and tumble of the 1990s.
Yes, you mentioned yourself, Andrei Sakharov, so probably we need Andrei Sakharov, or many charismatic leaders. I think probably I'm wrong, but once I heard Navalny in 2012, he said himself that we need 1,000 of Navalnys. So many active people, socially active, etc. And unfortunately, now mostly school children participated in this rally, but one schoolboy said also merely the same. No matter Putin or Navalny or somebody else, we just need a democracy, a system of division of powers, justice, etc. Justice should be independent. This boy is just 10 years old, and this is a little hope that in the future something will change. Because Vladimir Putin, after all, he will physically
he won't be there forever. Yeah.
Yeah, he won't stay forever.
All
anyway.
right. Anastasia Kirilenko, I want to thank you. I want to thank Anton Kozlov, Polina Nemirovskaya for speaking to us there from Central Courts there in Moscow, as well as Yelena Milchanovska. Stay with us because Media Watch is next. And we say hello to Emma James.
Hi there.
Was struck there during the conversation. People saying just when you think that you can predict what's going to happen in Russia, something unexpected happens.
Yes, absolutely. The protests this weekend certainly garnered a lot of international attention because standing up to Vladimir Putin is obviously something that requires a degree of bravery. And of course, Alexei Navalny, the opposition critic, the opposition leader, if you like, was among hundreds arrested. Now, he's really risen in terms of his global kind of standing just recently because of a number of things. Now, one is this video that he posted on YouTube just this month. 13 million people have watched this. It's 50 minutes in length, and it basically goes into great detail about the financial, sometimes questionable dealings of the Prime Minister, Dmitry Medvedev. And this was ostensibly the reason behind those protests that we saw this weekend in Moscow and 24 other cities. Lots of images being shared on social media, one way in which these kind of stories can get out, because obviously Russian state media has a habit to tend to ignore these things. In fact, Navalny himself is always blacked out on state media. You never actually get to see him. And
yeah,
some of these...
on that point, our correspondent Thomas Lowe was saying how the Kremlin was a bit caught off guard because the younger generation, well, there was no media blackout for them. They saw it all.
Absolutely, and that is the thing with Twitter. It as Donald Trump always says, it's a way of getting around the media and speaking directly to the people. And it's something that Trump is criticised for, but obviously in this case it is seen as a positive thing. One person who it's interesting to look at their Twitter feed, Alec Loon, was also arrested. He's a Guardian journalist, and he was there taking photographs. He was arrested and held for 5.5 hours, and he goes into great detail about exactly what happened to him during that time, tweeting here that when he asked why he was being detained, this police officer said, "Maybe you are accused of killing Kennedy." Funny guy, said Alec Loon. And it is an interesting insight into the Russian sort of forces of order and the way that they handle these things, if you take a look at his Twitter feed, which goes into great detail. Now, despite the fact that protesting is ostensibly a fairly dangerous thing to do, a lot of people still kept their sense of humour about them. This gentleman pointing out that Medvedev's duck, which allegedly has its own luxurious property, has become the symbol of today's Navalny protest. And what we see, lots of young people again holding these ducks while out on the protest.
All right, rubber duckies. And being opposed to Vladimir Putin, not always a laughing matter. We didn't have a time, by the way, in our discussion to talk about the opposition lawmaker murdered in Ukraine, the lawyer for Magnitsky, who fell out of a fourth-story window a couple weeks ago.
Absolutely. There's been a slew of very high-profile deaths, leading some people to question whether Putin is in fact emboldened by the fact that he is no longer being criticised by the White House. There has been a real lack of word from Donald Trump himself in reaction to either the treatment of protesters or indeed these high-profile deaths. This gentleman is typical of many, many people on Twitter right now saying, I hope Alexei Navalny survives this brave stand against the butcher Putin, Trump's BFF, he refers to him as. And Alexei Navalny has already himself been attacked in the last week. This one's slightly less serious, although he did post on Facebook that he worried initially he'd been attacked with acid. It was actually a green antiseptic liquid, which he then found very hard to remove. And he actually turned it to his advantage, it becoming really a rallying call for his supporters. They then posting images of themselves on social media with green faces, showing their support for him. But as you mentioned, these high-profile deaths, the Washington Post wrote this article on Thursday, 10 critics of Vladimir Putin who died violently or in suspicious ways. It's illustrated with this photograph here, which is on the streets of Kiev, where Denis Voronenkov was killed. Now, Ukraine's president called that shooting an act of state terrorism by Russia.
All right. Just very briefly, Anton Kozlov, we saw the murder of Boris Nemtsov, the opposition politician. Is Alexei Navalny under threat?
Oh, he may be, of course. I think so. I don't think Putin will order his assassination, but we've seen with Nemtsov, there was a group of Chechens, and they were probably ordered by Ramzan Kadyrov.
An act of zeal, perhaps, sometimes.
Whatever, yeah.
All right, I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you, Emma James. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.